Hi, this is Sam Michelman, and today I'm going to be interviewing sound designer, performer, and a good friend of mine, Aaron Carroll. Thank you so much for this interview, Aaron. Very excited to talk with you.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for having me today, Sam.
Great. All right. So I'm just going to ask you a few questions about your job. So,
Yeah.
when did you start getting into audio production and why?
The audio production I got into when I was about 15 or 16. I'd always been into music because my dad was a musician too, and so we had lots of music and instruments around the house, and so kind of from the beginning that was an interest. But um, you know the audio engineering and the sound design kind of came in later when I was a teenager, and I started fooling around with different software, music software that they had out, and one of them was called Acid Music, and the other one was called Cool Edit, and just being able to kind of work with those programs and make recordings that that were in my head. I mean, that was just a lot of fun to work with, and so yeah, probably about 15, 16, and then it just kind of went from there. Um, you know, After that, it went to things like Pro Tools and Logic, and as those new software came out.
All right. So now my next question to you is, what was your first ever professional sound design production that you worked on, and how was that experience as a whole?
Yeah, that's a good question. As far as the first one, I, I I'm not sure I remember the exact first one, because there's been quite a lot. But one that I've done recently that just came out that I'm really proud of is it's a slot game. It's an animated slot game based around the comedian and actor George Lopez. So I don't. Are you familiar with George Lopez at all?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, that was a great experience because I got to go to Paramount Studios in Hollywood, and track voiceovers with George personally, and being kind of a fan of his already with his comedy and his television show. That was a really cool experience, and he was really really a good guy to work with, and very funny. And that game, uh, I finished that game back in the end of February, kind of before the shutdowns and things like that. So I wrapped that one up in February, and just this month, last week, that one was released globally. So I'm really proud of that, and it's an Ainsworth game. So and it's called George Lopez's Neighborhood Tour, and so really excited to see how that does out in the casinos.
great, great, man. Now, who are some producers, famous or not, that you personally look up to, and why?
Okay. Um, well, first of all, like I've always really been interested in what my friends were doing. You know, uh, I think it's special because I know them, and so naturally I'm interested in what they're doing, and I've been able to uh, have a lot of friends that are very skilled, very talented people, and they're really good about sharing information and sharing ideas with me, which is nice. So you can learn a lot from your friends. But so in to name a couple, like in the Greeley, Denver area, Greg Heimbecker, I learned a lot from. Colin Bricker, I like a lot of stuff that he does out of Denver. Um, Other producers that I'm really into, like is like Amon Tobin, Brian Eno, Butch Vig, Alan Parsons, and then of course like Frank Zappa, huge influence.
Wow,
Yeah,
those are some excellent producers as well as some great musicians as well. That's just amazing, man.
absolutely.
So I know, so yeah, for audio production, I know you probably do a lot of mastering stuff. And so, what do you think personally is the most challenging aspect of mastering?
Um, well, I'll just talk about like when I first started mastering and getting into that. What was a challenge for me was um, getting if you're working on an album, say, um, it's easy to get one song to sound really really good, but if you have these different compositions that are all on the same record, getting them when I first started working on those kind of things, getting them to sound distinctly different, but sound like a family. So together, they as an album, it sounds every song sounds like it belongs with the other songs on the record, but they all have their sort of distinct sound. So getting bringing all the elements together like that and making a whole album cohesive was a challenge at first. And when I'm working on games and doing composition in the game, sound design, sound effects, Foley, those kind of things, it's the same thing. Every time I look at a game or a set of sounds and music that need to go together, it's really important to me that they sound like they belong to each other, that they're related, but at the same time that they have their own distinct personalities. So that was uh, that was a challenge for me, but I think for everybody, there's so many. Mastering is such a dense art. There's a lot to it, and there's a lot of different angles. So I imagine it's a personal thing that everyone's going to find, their own kind of challenge with it. Um, so
That's it's a good take on the concept of mastering. So now, just one final question before we end this interview.
sure.
Um, so, what advice would you give to people in the music industry, but especially those who specifically work in the field of audio production?
Okay. Well, the first one is like listen to everything. I mean, don't be afraid of certain styles or listen to every style of music. Um, and beyond that, really listen to movies and television and video games and all these different media forms that are out there, because it goes way beyond just music. There's audio engineering and sound design is everywhere. It's in corporations, all kinds of things from Amazon to Disney, to Netflix. I mean, there's sound engineers and sound designers everywhere, and so being aware of kind of all the different possible markets that you could uh, get into with those kind of skills is great. And also, like, at the same time, because as musicians and stuff, I mean, we're pretty obsessed with music most of the time, and it's just like for me, it's been that way most of my life. It's what I do pretty much every day. But I also think it's important to learn other life skills and keep yourselves uh, well-rounded as a human. Um, because, for instance, the business aspect, learning some business skills to go along with your music and your art is really important because you know you can't really you can't really work out in the world even if you're an artist without those business skills. So don't be afraid to learn other trades, learn other things, and kind of always be a student of life. So because like there's an art form, there's an art to sound and music, but in the same way, a lot of those skills that you learn, you can apply those to the rest of your life. And so just always just kind of remain forever a student of life. And You know, I think that if you stay true to yourself and what you're about, um, that you'll do fine. You know, even when things are complicated. You know, like say during now there's a pandemic right now, so you know there's not a lot of entertainment going on. So you know this is a good time to either really immerse yourself in your studies or your practice, so that when things open back up, you know you come out swinging with new ideas. You know, or for other people that you know it's not a bad time to like learn other skills too. So I think being a well-rounded human and all that, and being a student for the rest of your life is good. You know, so that would uh, if that makes sense, that would be my advice.
That is such great advice, man. You know?
Thank you.